very happy and very proud to have as our visitor and guest on campus this morning a very notable lady of our time. It's Her Excellency Ghani of Pakistan. She's one of the members of the Pakistani delegation to the United Nations, the only lady on the Pakistani team, and is a member of some of the United Nations special committees. She's had a very colorful career, very notable career, including, if one can believe the newspapers, having dispatched some 73 tigers. Is that really true? That's true. And now she's going to speak to us for this hour, and she's just going to say what she wants to say tell us about Pakistan, and then you'll have a chance to ask her all kinds of questions that you doubtless have in your minds about Pakistan. And since the program is being recorded for the Voice of America, Russell Porter, who is an old hand at repeating, take over at that point. Your Excellency, we are very happy to have you here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be here with you, and I appreciate to be able to say a few words to you about, perhaps I start with a brief sketch of my own life to introduce myself, and perhaps then I go on to Pakistan to say what we are trying to do there and what we have been doing there. My state, Bhopal state, used to be in partitioned India. After partition, all the 600 states that used to be in India were finished. So I thought there was no purpose left to carry on in a state where we had been for nearly 300 years, and where we had done all our tiger shooting and all the sports and all things you've heard about. So I went to Pakistan. I have been in Pakistan for nearly 4 years now. And the first years of my life in Pakistan were naturally spent in finding a home for myself, settling down, finding a new life and a new purpose. Now you know Pakistan is a small country and a Muslim country who base their ideology on Islam. The newspaper yesterday, I think, mentioned something about the status of women in Islam. It wasn't exactly what I had said. I'm sorry if I caused any confusion to compare our women with the women of the West, because you're far advanced and our women are not halfway up the way you people are doing. But as far as the law goes, the Muslim woman is not prevented from doing anything that any Western woman does. If we haven't taken the opportunity, it's probably been due to lack of education, lack of understanding, and perhaps due to the ladies themselves who have not wanted to go into life as much as the Western people do, the Western women do. The women of Islam, if they hadn't had these political rights, would not have been rulers of a state. I mentioned that for my own state, because my grandmother was a ruler in her own rights, my great-grandmother was a ruler in her own rights, and my great-great-grandmother was a ruler in her own rights. So that if women didn't have those rights, if they were prevented by the Muslim religion, they would not have been there. The same way Pakistan does not place, there are no laws to prevent women from doing most of the things that are done in the West. And I suppose as times go on and they see and learn, they will soon learn to do the same things as the women of the West are doing today. I have been at the United Nations. This is my first visit to the States. I have been there for about 5 weeks altogether. We are working on the third committee, which sometimes the men sarcastically refer to as the women's committee. We deal with humanitarian and social problems such as human rights, problems of refugees in Europe, status of women, forced labor, and things like that. So far, we have only done one item, that is refugees. And we were in the middle of the second human rights when I was rushed off to Denver to attend the symphony salute that is being given to the United Nations. Now, rather than going on with my talk, I would very much appreciate if there were any special questions that would make the talk more informal, and perhaps I would be able to deal with subjects which are of interest to you rather than talking about something which does not interest you. So if there are any questions, I will be very happy to answer them.
May I repeat that my only reason for being here is to repeat the question into the microphone so that the Voice of America will have both the question and the answer. Thank you very much, Princess, for these remarks, and I'm sure there are many questions in many minds that you would like to ask. So we are now ready to entertain questions. Yes. Are the schools in Pakistan different than those in America?
Frankly, I don't think there is much difference, but we are very, very short of schools because we are very short of space. We have about 8 million refugees come in Pakistan, and to find a place for them to live in, there have been quite a number of schools and colleges that have had to close down for the time being to give the refugees a chance of living somewhere. But they are about the same.
Is the average family able to send all of its children to school?
No. Because of financial and economical conditions, it is not possible to do that.
May I ask this? Can you hear back there, Ollie? A little hard. Could you speak up just a bit more? Another question. What refugees did you refer to when you spoke of the...
After partition, the Muslim refugees from India came over to Pakistan. The Hindus who did not want to remain in Pakistan went over to India as refugees. So both India and Pakistan are faced with a very large refugee problem.
The question, Princess, is do students without financial means have any other opportunities to go to formal schools or to receive formal education? I suppose this means, is there any state subsidy?
There is, but not sufficient for the whole population at all. There are a few schools who take in people, but it doesn't come up to the standard at all.
How did the students from Pakistan who are here in Denver get to Denver?
I really wouldn't know. Probably under some scheme, the international schemes of exchange of students would probably be fine.
United Nations?
It might be. It may be a different organization.
Probably Fulbright, isn't it? What are the differences between Indians and Pakistani?
The Pakistani is an entirely Muslim ideology, and the Indians are an entirely Hindu ideology, which is a big difference for the Muslims because they like to deal with their life according to how they think they have received it from God. The problems of their life according to the Quran and Sunnah, a religious belief.
May I follow this up, Princess, by this question? Would you then call Pakistan a theocratic state?
Probably it is.
You would accept that definition.
I
I've heard
wouldn't-
Sir
I
Safrullah argue vigorously that it was not a theocratic
Well, I
state.
don't know. I said probably it was, but I wouldn't know.
What are some of the long-range programs of Pakistan for its development?
Water is our greatest problem. We're hoping to develop something that would give us sufficient water. And of course develop the agriculture industry, which is very backward. For that we need finances. And our economic conditions are just now very, very bad.
Is there any discrimination in India against the Muslims?
I would say I don't know since I've left India, but judging from the number of refugees still coming in, they couldn't have been very happy there to have to pour into Pakistan as they are.
What protection do the Hindus have in Pakistan against the Muslims?
We do not try to force any religion on anyone. Everyone is quite free, and equality of human beings is respected by the Quran and by our religion, so that we can't go against it.
Educational background and how you were brought up before partition.
Coming from a very old Muslim family who was very deeply interested in religion, the whole background was on Muslim religion. Then I had tutors, I stayed at home, and I had to start administration at the age of 13, that is learning administration. Any education that I've had has been entirely in the home, and I have never been out to a school or a college or anywhere.
May I ask this question in the same regard? You mentioned the status of women under Muslim law, but what are the actualities as far as practice is concerned in Pakistan? Is there still purdah, for example, and other practices of this kind?
Parda is not compulsory. It is entirely up to a woman whether she wants to observe parda or whether she does not want to observe parda. And of course we haven't had a Muslim law so far. The constitution is still in the making, so that the old laws that used to be during the British time still continue.
How did it happen that your father was not the ruler rather than
My
you?
father was the ruler, but before him my grandmother was the ruler. Before her there was my great-grandmother, and that was because there were no males in the direct line. So women were given the opportunity.
You accept the political question.
I'm afraid I do not know very much about politics. I'm sorry. I know exactly as much as you do, and perhaps less. The water problem just now is that the source of water, the Indus, the river, the source is in India, and the river comes through Pakistan. Well, if India decides to build a dam that would prevent the waters coming to Pakistan, it creates a very serious water shortage for us. That is the position just now.
I think you might be interested in knowing that your countryman, Mr. Ashraf, has just completed negotiations here in Denver with
So I
Bureau of
understand.
Reclamation for a
So
new
I
series of
understand.
dams and barrages.
Yes. Again, I have read about it in the papers yesterday morning, and that is about all I know. Not that I know of. No, we would rather they didn't. Practice there. They are quite free to do exactly as they like, exactly as they feel. Hindus, Christians, Jews, anyone. There is no restriction on anyone's religion. Well, I wouldn't know exactly what is happening in India, but we are still getting about 2,000 to 4,000 refugees coming in every month.
Any other questions? May I ask, in this same connection, do all religious beliefs have equal political rights in Pakistan?
I'm not sure about that. I wouldn't say that.
I think in the proposed constitution, the president or the prime minister or the premier has to be Muslim, but I don't think that's...
So I believe, but I've been away for 6 months nearly, and I don't know what developments have taken place during this time.
There was a question up here.
I'd like to ask
The gentleman is interested in your hairdo, Princess. Is this traditional for Pakistan?
No, it's not traditional, but you find plenty of women with short hair. Plenty.
Would this have anything to do, the question comes from Mr. Bennett, with the fact that you are a licensed pilot?
I used to have a license while I was in Bhopal, but since I have come to Pakistan, there has been no opportunity for me to keep up flying, and so that license does not exist anymore.
I think there was a question here. What daily activities in the city, in business, and so on, do Pakistan women take part in?
Very, very few. Not many women are taking a great part. You find a few women taking interest in politics, or perhaps doctors and nurses, but that's about all.
Does Pakistan have good medical facilities?
Quite fair for the country we are, for the small country. The medical facilities are quite good compared.
Are they widely distributed, these medical facilities? Do you have them in all parts of Pakistan?
Well, perhaps not in all parts, but they are doing their best in trying to get it to every corner.
The question is, are there any transportation problems in Pakistan?
We use donkeys and camels. Most. But there are, of course, cars and airplanes and trains and everything of that type.
Question. What is Pakistan's attitude toward the United Nations as a hope for peace and security, progress in the world?
Well, I think that anything worth having is always, you have to work very hard for it. And although it seems that the United Nations has not made a great progress during these 9 years, we still hope that they'll be able to achieve the goal, a very noble goal, I must say.
I think it's interesting that your foreign minister, Sir Zafrullah Khan, has been elected to the International Court, which is quite an honor, I think, to Pakistan.
Well, we received it with mixed feelings because we were very unhappy to lose such an able person as Sir Zafrullah, but still it's a big honor for him and a great honor for the country he represents.
Does the United States have any military bases in Pakistan?
Not that I know of.
Would you care to comment on the nature of United States-Pakistan relations in regard to Pakistan's security?
I think the United States have been a very good friend, and we are extremely grateful for all they have done for us and are still doing. We consider them as our very, very good friends, and I think every Pakistani is very, very grateful.
What will be the nature of your responsibilities as a member of the UN delegation?
One of the 60 nations who are there, and we are dealing with the problems of refugees, human rights, status of women, forced labor, and things like that. Children's funds and all that comes under that. There is nothing special that I'm doing.
In the solution of Pakistan's problems, what would be those things which would do the most good? More trade, more aid from the United States, what?
Well, that seems to be a rather technical question, but generally I would think that industrialization would help a lot.
And you need both technical and financial assistance to begin that?
Yes, definitely.
What is the attitude of the people and the government of Pakistan toward communism and specifically toward Red China?
Towards communism, because I've already said we are a country which is deeply influenced by our religion, and we believe in a God, you see, the same God as you believe or anyone else believes in. We may have different roads to follow, but it is a belief in that same God. If communism means it's a godless country or a godless doctrine, the Muslims will never accept it. I think you have a good example in Turkey, which has been on the communist border for so many hundreds of years. but they are never going to become communists.
Do you care at all to comment on Nehru's recent trip to Red China?
I don't think that's fair for me to comment on a
I take it as no comment. What are those natural resources of Pakistan that would lend themselves toward industrialization?
Well, that is another technical question about which I'm not very well aware of.
Is the agriculture of Pakistan sufficient to furnish a normal supply of food to the people of Pakistan?
As long as we get sufficient water. If there is a danger, if the water is diverted, well, nothing can be grown.
What is the concept of the average Pakistani of an American citizen?
I suppose they are just as confused as Americans are about us because the distances prevent the two countries from knowing each other better. And I think it's a very good idea that they're having these exchange of students and things like that, traveling and going to see places and people for themselves. But I should say they're just as confused as people here are about us.
How do you see the American citizen now that you've taken a look at it?
Well, I find them very kind, very generous, and very sweet people.
Don't you think it possible, Princess, that you people are even more confused than we are because we haven't seen many Pakistani films?
I think you are right.
Are the armed forces of Pakistan reasonably up to date?
That's supposed to be a very secret thing, the armed forces are, and I wouldn't know very much about that. But they are doing quite a lot to bring them up to the standard.
How are communications maintained between East and West Pakistan?
What sort of communications? I suppose through the usual telephones, telegrams.
Do you have problems of having to go through some other country
And
though with your line?
yes, I suppose ships and aeroplanes.
Is there an agreement with India which will allow these communication lines to cross through Indian territory to connect East and West Pakistan?
I don't know definitely, but I guess they wouldn't work unless there was an agreement.
Do you find it a disadvantage to have these two states, these two parts of the state so far apart?
That's again becoming too political for me. I'd rather not.
Do the Pakistanis share the European belief that all Americans are very wealthy?
I guess you're right.
What was your impression of New York when you first saw it?
I was impressed with the large buildings you have, with the tall buildings, and the speed of life is much too fast for me.
What type of entertainment do you have in Pakistan, such as our radio, theater, television, motion picture, and so on?
We have no television, we have motion pictures. That is the main entertainment, I think, and they have music, concerts, theaters of sorts, very, very primitive stages, of course, and racing, sports. No, it's on a very, very old traditional thing.
Is it? May I pursue this just a moment? Is it an indigenous theater?
I should say yes.
And how does it differ from, say, Western theater?
The whole technique is all a very primitive stage.
Forms that are unlike play forms?
I haven't been fortunate enough to go to these because there's never been an opportunity.
Would Pakistan have specific sports that we wouldn't be acquainted with over here? What sort of games do you play?
I think the best game in Pakistan, I would say, is squash. Squash rackets. You know that game, don't you?
How many of you know squash? Few.
Well, I think it's a Western game, squash rackets. And then field hockey, as you call it. We only call it hockey because we have no ice hockey.
Outside of the possibility of the American people, what has impressed you most about the United States since you've been here?
The United Nations, of course.
Does the religious culture of your people do anything to suppress drama? I mean, is there anything in the religion which would work against imitation of nature?
I should say that our religion doesn't encourage it at all. but I don't think it suppresses it either.
Does Pakistan have a legal communist party, and if so, does it have any significant political influence?
I heard while I was in the States that it had been outlawed, the Communist Party.
The question is, it is his impression, the questioner's impression, that Pakistan is being built up militarily to neutralize India because India is so friendly with Red China. Would you believe this to be true?
I really don't know anything about that.
Can you conceive of any peaceful solution to the Kashmir question?
As I see it, perhaps it would be settled by a plebiscite, and I don't know why it has been delayed.
Do you see any hope that there'll be a plebiscite?
I don't, for the time being.
You wouldn't care to comment further?
No.
Back in the field of sports, can you tell us some more about tiger hunting? And when did you start to shoot tigers?
I was 6 when I started going out with my father, just to get acquainted with it, so that I wasn't afraid when I had to shoot it myself.
What happens if you merely wound a tiger?
If you wound the tiger, you're supposed to bring it back home because of the danger it is to all other human beings. Then it starts attacking human beings for no reason. So it has to be followed on foot. And it has to be brought back home, otherwise you're never forgiven.
How do you follow it?
How do you follow a tiger?
One that is wounded.
A wounded.
You have to go very, very slowly and very, very carefully following the blood trail.
Is it true that they lie in ambush for you when wounded?
Well, when they are wounded,
Go ahead.
when they are wounded, it's quite natural for a tiger to go and lie down under a bush, a heavy bush where you can't see it. It's probably not keen to go further. And if you get there, well, he's bound to attack you because he's not at all happy with himself.
When you go into the field after tiger, do you go on foot, on elephant back, on how?
There are several ways of doing it. The safest is to have a machan. Now you'll say what a machan is. A machan is a box right up high in the tree where you go and sit and wait for the tiger to come. Because the tiger can't climb a tree, so you're quite safe. And you shoot from there. That's the first stage. Some people go out on elephants and find the tiger and shoot from an elephant. The last and most exciting stage is shooting it on foot. And from a bullock cart, if you know what I mean. A cart pulled by bullocks. That is quite dangerous because often these bullocks bolt. The moment they see or smell a tiger, they just go off. You can't have a decent shot. And then lately, since the war, we enjoyed very much shooting tigers from the jeep.
One day she bagged 4 tigers. Would you care to tell that story?
Well, I was sort of feeling bored with myself, so I thought I'd go out hunting tigers. Not exactly hunting tigers, but just go out in the jungles and see what I could get. And I had no companions to go with me, so I had 2 little children who came to. They were my son's friends. One was about 10, the other one was about 12. And they were spending the night with us, so I went and woke them up. And I said, would you like to come out hunting? Of course, they were thrilled. Yes. The hour I started for this shoot was about 4 o'clock in the morning. And of course, I didn't hope to get anyone to get up at that hour at such short notice, so I thought these 2 companions were going to be the best. And we got into our jeep, and off we went until we came to the forest. We saw a few animals, and sometimes one doesn't want to shoot these harmless things. We just went through looking at them, probably taking snapshots or movies. Until suddenly one of these chaps, he just nearly jumped out of the car. He said he could see a tiger. And of course I didn't believe, because by that time it was 8 or 9, the sun was up, and you don't usually come across tigers at 8 or 9 in the morning. So I thought he was imagining things to be tigers, and I didn't take notice. He nearly pulled me out of the seat because I was driving. He said, "You must stop." And when I looked, I did see a tiger. I was quite thrilled too, so I had a shot at the tiger. I got him. Then with this shot, it disturbed the other tigers that were lying around. So I got another tugging. There was another one somewhere nearby, and there it was standing, sort of looking. All the surprises say, who is here interfering with our domain? And I had another shot, and that one rolled over. By this time, I had disturbed the other two that had been left. And they were by now quite angry and getting off. Not very fast, but just starting to get off, moving. I had another shot, and that one rolled over. By that time, the fourth was galloping away, so he had to be finished off before he went, and that's how I got 4 tigers in about 2 minutes or less than 2 minutes.
The question is back to the problem of women's rights. You have mentioned the fact that the law in Pakistan gives women equal rights. What about the religious ethics or codes?
Probably I could answer that better if you could say what exactly you were thinking about, what angle. Parda? There is no restriction as far as I know.
Do you have any other questions on it? Back from women to tigers. What sort of a rifle
No,
do you
never
use?
automatic.
What sort of a rifle do you use?
Rifle, used ordinary magazine rifle, I prefer that, but some people have double barrels. But after you've let off the 2, then you are stuck. So it's better to have 4 or 5 in the magazine.
Is it automatic or bolt action? Or
Bolt action.
What size? What caliber?
I use different calibers. I use the 240. You know that? That's by Holland & Holland, a very successful rifle. I use the Super 30. I use the 30 Springfield, which I believe is yours, isn't it? And I use the 375. I use the biggest I've used is 465, and I don't like to use it all the time.
Is the average person allowed to own arms and hunt in Pakistan?
Pakistan has no hunting because it's a big desert, the West is. But this was back in Bhopal I'm talking about. Pakistan has the hunting in East Pakistan, which is very far away from where I am, and I don't know how they do it there. But where I live, round about Karachi and these places, there's very little chance, and no tigers as far as I know.
Do you have any laws forbidding hunting, however?
In some places, yes, the same as yours. The seasons come, the shooting season is on, and then you can't do it after that.
How many languages do you speak in Pakistan, and how did you learn the English language so well?
I learned English at home. In Pakistan, they speak Bengali and Urdu, and some parts of Persian. I know a little bit of Persian, a little bit of Arabic on account of the religion, and a little English. That's all I know.
Is there an official language in Pakistan?
It's for the moment, I think it's going to be English, and later on Bengali and Urdu.
English, Bengali, and Urdu. Well, we have time for about one more question. One more question. All right. Do you believe in prohibition?
We have to. It's not allowed for us to drink, but I don't know if other Muslims agree on this point.
Well, the princess has certainly done well for us, answering certainly every type of question that we could possibly ask. I'll turn the meeting now back to Dr. Kerr.
Thank you very much. I hope.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that the applause indicates the gratitude to you of the numerous students from various classes who've met here. The meeting is adjourned.